Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Matt Garvey and we are here to talk about making comics today, and we have a very special guest, one of my all-time favorite colorists in the entire world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kurt Michael Russell. Kurt, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for that very kind intro.
No. You are. When I first started making comics, I wanted to start my coloring journey. I found your YouTube channel. It has been a godsend. It really has, and and that I've done a couple of your courses, that kind of thing. Failed them miserably, but I've done them nonetheless. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. So you are here to talk about colouring today. So for those of you that don't know you, who are you? What do you work on? Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Okay. Well, my name is Kurt. I'm a colorist, and I started. It's 10 years actually. This year, finally, I think that I've been doing this, and which is crazy.
Overnight
uh,
success.
yeah, like I mean, it's a tough industry, and I'm glad that I've survived this long. But no, I'm a colorist right now. I'm working on Money Shot for Vault. I just finished up the last issue of the plot for also Vault has me chained in the basement. In case you didn't know, I'm just that's all I've got.
Those
But
damn
but no,
brothers.
I'm working. No, I like them a lot. They seem to like me, so I'm happy.
They're good guys.
But I just finished up the plot number 8 for them. I've got 2 books that haven't been announced yet that are coming out later this year with them. That I've been told, like, do not tell them the title of this book. I'm like, okay, we're gonna announce that at some point, so I'm gonna keep my mouth shut there. I've done a lot of hack slash. I did a run on Postal, GlitterBomb. I don't know if you want to sit here and listen to me tell all this
No,
stuff,
no, no. It's fine.
I've done. But
You've
that's a
done some
few of them.
stuff. You've got
And
you've got your chops. So yeah, no. Say it. We'll put
yeah,
links
yeah,
to
and
everything in the description so you can pick up Kurt's books that he's worked on. You can see his color journey. So yeah, no. You keep plugging yourself, sir.
yeah, in addition to the comics, I have a YouTube channel, uh, which I think more people know me from the YouTube channel from the comics, but uh, but no, my YouTube channel is about coloring and how to color, and I try to focus a lot on storytelling and some of the there's a lot of videos on the technical how tos of the layers go here and this kind of thing, but I try to make a point to always explain my decisions and what goes into them, not just from a technical standpoint, but also from a story standpoint. And so I'm kind of part time both. It's like or full time both, depending on how you want to look at it. Some weeks it feels like full time both, but yeah, YouTuber and colorist. I guess that's where I've landed at here.
You are the Bob Ross of comic books on YouTube. You really are. Like
I don't know about that. I'll take
I
it as a
could literally
compliment, but I
watch
don't
you
know.
all day on YouTube because you've got a very calm voice. Very calm voice, like when you
Well,
like me. I don't know how people watch this channel with me because I get way too excited and I'm too all over. But you're like so yeah. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna what I'm gonna show you what I do with the keys and stuff like that. It's like you're just so calm. You're just so level. You're the complete
I,
opposite to me.
it's who I am. It's not an actor anymore. Like I don't put on a YouTuber persona of, hey guys, let's smash, like like I can't.
Neither do
I mean,
I.
I can
Neither do
do
I.
that, but I don't want to do that. Like I'm not. I can't be that guy. Like I make fun of that guy on my channel a lot, but and usually that's why I'm just like, hey, click the buttons everywhere. Like I get so I don't like the YouTuber part of the YouTubing, the things that come along with it. But and so I try to I've found that I work best if you just tell me, like, if I try to treat it as if I'm going to sit across from you, in a table, and I'm going to tell you how to do something, and I try to imagine that I'm talking to one person instead of like you know however many people are watching these videos or whatever, and so I try to. That's why I don't really script things very tightly, because I've figured out I'm just more comfortable almost on the fly when it comes to explaining things. If I think about it too much, I'll think about it too much, like way too much. And so um the YouTube is kind of an extension of my personality for sure. Like I'm a pretty low key, um, unexcitable guy.
Does the when you're doing the YouTube stuff, does it kind of help the boredom and the isolation of making comics?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I've been streaming so much lately too. Is
Yeah.
like, I mean, and Vault's been nice about this, about not caring about what I'm showing or whatever most of the time, as long as I, don't show anything too early or whatever. But it's between the streams and the videos and the comments and all that. Like, it's definitely like, I mean, I'm not an extroverted person by any stretch of the imagination. Like, this this pandemic situation has like affected my wife a whole lot more than it has me. Like, she's very much an extrovert, and I read a great explanation of the difference between those two the other day that fits perfectly. Like, I recharge my batteries at home, and
Okay.
expend energy if I'm having to like interact with people. She's the opposite. It's like, she goes out and the batteries are charged up. Everything's going. You come home and it's like things start to drain. It's like we're just complete opposites in that way. But streaming and the videos and all that, and my community and Discord and everything, I talk to them more than some of my own family and friends these days. So like
They are
it's been a
friends. They are
lifesaver for me
family.
through the pandemic. Yeah.
I mean, I found that with a lot of my supporters, like I hate the word fans because it comes from fanatic, and I don't want fanatics liking me. So I always call people that support me, they like my supporters, and on Twitter and stuff like that. They are lovely people. It's weird because obviously like 'cause I had a baby last year, and like I'll do Comic Cons, and people bring me gifts and stuff, and it's so weird. Like, not in a horrible way, in like the nicest, caring way that they like me that much that they wanted to get like my child something. It's actually, but it's surreal, and like you say, like especially with what's going on, like I speak to them more than I speak to like my friends. It is bizarre, but it's no, it's good. All the details for Kurt's channel, Kurt's stream, stuff like that will be in the descriptions below. But what is your channel called, just so people know what it's called?
Color with Kurt. Color with Kurt. It's youtube.com/color with Kurt.
And I would totally recommend
That'll get you.
anyone go and watch it. Even if you have no interest in comic book coloring, but you're interested in how comics are made, it's an absolute must to watch, because as you know, like I can teach you so much in this channel with regards to creating comics, and I am on my colorist journey, and thanks to Kurt's channel and his courses, which are also very good and worth every single penny, because he gives you all the brushes, all the palettes, all the stuff to test, to all the pages and stuff to try on. It's absolutely fantastic, and I can't say enough nice things about Kurt. And he does reviews of your work as well, which is even good, which is so weird. So you don't have to go to a Comic Con to get like a critique of your work. He will tell you that you're shit, and he does often with my stuff. He's never no. He's
Don't
always
scare
super
people
lovely.
away.
He's always super lovely. It's always super lovely. But so you've been a colorist for about 10 years now, and if memory serves, you were a nurse, right? And you were like being a nurse and a comic book colorist at the same time.
I've been a lot of things, but nurse is one of them. Yeah.
That's so weird. So how did you get into comics, and how did you get into coloring comics? Tell me. I have no. I'm genuinely interested in how this journey happened.
I mean, what you're really asking is, why on earth are you doing this? Like, that's it, right?
Pretty much.
How did you end up here? No, so I'll try to keep this as brief as I can, but so I've been drawing since birth, basically. I don't remember starting. I've always been into art, and my mom has like, pictures and drawings of things from when I was 3 or 4 years old. Like, there weren't great drawings for 3 or 4 years old, but you could tell, oh, that's Spider-Man or that's Batman or whatever. And so I was always into art, and but I was always, even as a kid, I was a very practically minded, like very analytical kid. And so the idea of like really just being an artist and like making money as an artist, that didn't make any sense to me. Like, even I was like, that seems really hard. Like, I just want a paycheck every 2 weeks. Like that sounds much better. And so it was always like going to be a hobby or something that that I would do for fun, or maybe I do make a little money on the side or something, but I never thought of it as a career. And back in I mean, I was drawing all through high school, and kind of you get into college and kind of stopped like a lot of people do, kind of drifted away from it. And then back in around, let's see, I guess it was around 2010 or 2011. Um, I had well, that was before that, but I'd bought a Wacom, digital, drawing tablet, like a regular like Intuos 2 or whatever it was that lasted forever. But I got a drawing tablet, and just started playing around with digital art, and coloring myself, and kind of trying to learn what was going on. I had no idea what I was doing. But and then at some point around that time, figured out like this is a job in and of itself that people can do. Just because I didn't really even know coloring was a job when I was a kid. Wasn't something I really aspired to. I thought I might draw comics one day. I did think that I would try that, but um, I kind of like the coloring process more than anything else. And I guess it was I had tried out for a couple of things and like failed horribly, and was learning that I didn't really know what I was doing, and that coloring was way more involved than just staying in the lines. And 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 all the things that I see students doing and people doing and I'm giving feedback. Like the reason that I'm able to quickly, you know, see problems and help give feedback and things, because I made every single one of those same mistakes. Like I didn't, and there was never a mentor, or I didn't have like someone to like really guide me. I was kind of on my own, and excuse me. And but anyway, um, back in uh, uh, it was 2012. I was working at the time as uh, a night shift nurse at the hospital, and I was working on ortho neuro floor, a lot of knees and hips and that kind of thing. And I was working nights, and I was keeping the same schedule even when I was off. I had friends that flip flop back and forth, like they're on days and they're on nights, and that didn't work very well. And it's like I just gonna stay like a night owl and be a vampire, I guess, for this job. And and so I found myself with a lot of time at night, like not really doing much of anything, and started really working on coloring more. And then not to like bring the interview down or anything, but my best friend died, 33 years old, very suddenly. And we had hung out. We obviously hung out a lot, played a lot of video games together, and that kind of thing. And between that and working nights, like I just had a whole bunch of time that I didn't know what to do with myself. And I'm not one to just I try to make my time productive. Like, well, how can I take advantage of this situation where I'm working nights and I've got all this time, and you can't really draw a book very easily and work full time, not like on a monthly basis, but coloring can be done on a kind of a part-time basis, because you can do a book in a week or something. And so I started I kind of lucked up and found a really nice Facebook group of creators that were uh, very much like me, in that they were all trying to break in and all trying to find jobs and things. And I didn't know what I was doing still at this point. Um, and but there were writers, there were artists, there were guys doing pitches together, and they're working on anthologies together, and like and all the advice I gave people about where to start, like, is I learned from that group, and I really learned about the process of making comics, and you know, and learned a lot. Like Facebook groups these days are hit or miss, that kind of thing. But this was a really focused small group, 30, 40 guys that just I look at them now. I look back on them now as sort of like my graduating class of comics. When people ask me like about advice about getting in and stuff, I recommend you find that, like, because a lot of people, it's like, of course, it's like I want to jump in and do Spider-Man, or I want to do Batman. It's like, wait, before you play in the major leagues, like you gotta at least play some little league or something, like, you know what I mean? Like you got to start somewhere. And but that's what that group was for me. Is it was just a lot of people in the same exact situation, and no one was making any money at it or anything, or not very much of it. But I learned a lot from them. And you work on this pitch, you work on these 4 pages for this antho, and you work on these 8, and all of a sudden, like, you've got a little portfolio. and it started to snowball very, very slowly. It took probably 2 or 3 years before I made something I could go out and buy a pizza with, probably. Um, but but I learned a lot from him, and made a couple of good connections with people, um, and it kind of, I don't know, it kind of ballooned from there, and slowly turned into something where people started searching me out, and looking, to hire me for this or that or whatever. And um the rest is history, as they say. I mean, that's the microwave version.
No, that's great. So you've gone from experience by learning the craft and networking, and that's obviously how you break it. Just out of interest, anyone else that from that Facebook group that you came up with that we would know? Is any famous names you wanna drop? I'm always interested.
Jeff McCumsey was one of them. Rafer, his name is, sorry, Rafer. His name just flew out of my head. Rafer Roberts, I believe it is.
Okay.
I don't know. A lot of, but anyway, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but those were two guys that I were real active and like admins and things, and
yeah,
and they're still making comics today too. So,
because when was your first professional gig? Because obviously I know you from the channel, but the first thing that I saw of yours was literally Top Cow's poster, which is a great book, by the way, which I absolutely adore. But when was what was your first, for a publisher, actual, name on the cover, proper logo, not just a small press independent comic?
It was definitely small press. So like, and I pulled up an old list because I'm terrible at remembering all this stuff from 10 years ago. But do you remember digital webbing from back in the day, like the forum?
You used to find collaborators on there.
That was the spot there for a little while. And they were, I think they were digital only at this point. Even they were kind of already on the way out, I think. And I did a book for them, like a 20 book, that it was the first full issue I'd ever done of anything, and it never came out. Like like they went under or whatever before the book came out.
Right.
So I don't count that.
Okay.
I think there was 2012 was all that was 2011. 2012 was all pitches and a cover here and there. But as far as like an actual first full length book that saw print, man, like you have to go all the way to 2014. Everything kind of blew up at the same time. Like I was in and it was totally random, like again, like Facebook post, someone said try out for something, but it was In the Dark. It was a horror anthology that was put together by Rachel Deering, and it actually was nominated for a Harvey and an Eisner as the anthology was. But I did like 8 pages for that, and then there was there was a bunch of other little Imaginary Drugs was another anthology that IDW published. I'm still looking for like a the funny thing is about my first, I guess, published book that someone would have heard of is probably Hack Slash, Son of SAMHAIN. That was put out by Image, the Tim Seeley book. That started a very long relationship with Tim. Tim has kept me busy for most of these 10 years now. We can talk about him a little bit later if you want. But
yeah, definitely, because I believe you two have just done your first DC work.
That's true. I did.
Congratulations!
Thank you.
I know that's been like a something that's been one of your personal goals for quite some time. Yeah, no, it's amazing, and the colours are just absolutely exceptional on it. I haven't got it physically, but I've bought it digitally. So no, it's because it's the Poison Ivy Harley Quinn story, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, written by Tim. Yeah, same guy.
But that's the whole thing about networking, though, is like when you find collaborators that you get on with, and like you show that you're reliable and you're good at what you're doing. They're not take you with them, but like if they need someone, like, well, I know someone good. Do you know what I mean? So that's, I think, that's one of the good things.
Grab onto some coattails. You know what I mean? Like grab someone's coattails.
Sorry, I was coughing a laugh at the same time.
But no, the funny thing was, like, I had I had done that 8-page thing for that anthology that Tim had written, and he didn't know who I was. We were just stuck together on this book. And then it happened again, like 3 weeks later, when he'd written and drawn a 4-page story for Liberator for Black Mask Studios.
Okay.
And they put me with him again. And so we ended up just totally randomly working with him twice. And so about 3 weeks later, I get a message from his editor at the time, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but his editor emails me and says, "Hey, his only question is can you color a book in 2 weeks?" And now at the time, I had never done this. But of course, the answer is yes. Like,
always
of course,
say yes, and you'll sort it out later. You'll find a way.
I will figure it out.
Yes.
Fake it till you make it, as they say. So I'm thinking, like, can I do a book in 2 weeks? That seems really fast. I mean, it seemed to me at the time. But I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. And so I don't think Tim knew this at the time. I think I've told him this since. But that was the first book that I ever had that was published, was like the first one I ever did. Like that, I mean, outside of, one or two like small press books that never even came out. And so it was very fortunate on my part, I think. But they didn't ask any other questions like, "Have you done this before?" I'm glad they didn't ask that, because that wouldn't have worked out. But you figure it out, like, and you start learning tricks and shortcuts and efficiency, and I'm still, to this day, I'm still like I'm a kind of a process junkie. Like I want it to be as efficient as possible, and that's, I don't know, I'm just kind of wired that way. But
no, that's fine, because one of the things I love about you, and I love about your channel, and I love about your courses is, so I've been watching you probably about 5 or 6 years.
I feel like we should say, by the way, I have not paid you to say any of this.
No. Trust me.
This is not hashtag ad. But go ahead.
No. The check's in the mail. No, it's one thing that I've enjoyed watching over the years, watching the YouTube channel and doing the courses, is watching your journey. And it's like how like if you look at, like, say, Frank Miller's like early Daredevil stuff, and you'll see how here he draws form and characters and action, that kind of thing. Then you'll see him get to his his Dark Knight Returns, and then his Sin City stage, and it's completely different from his Daredevil stuff. And then you'll see his new Dark Knight Returns, and the characters are just, his cartoony style has just evolved so much. The same thing could be said with your coloring style, because when I was first watching you, this is probably going to sound too technical for some people that don't know about coloring, but what Kurt used to do is, he would pick a section of a character, like say like their chest or their face, and he would put it on its own layer, and then he would render that, put the shadows and highlights and everything. Then he would merge that down to the image below. But now you do the mask version, which is the non-destructive version, where you'll do everything on masks, which you can change and tweak later. And it's weird seeing your journey change over there. It's infuriating because I'm learning one way, then I've got to learn another way because I've been doing the courses. But it's really impressive to see how, being a press dog, you're always learning. You're always trying to improve. Are you at a stage now where you think, do you know what, I've cracked it, I've nailed the formula, or are you still, no, I need to learn more, I need to like have 100 layers and stuff, like, because it used to be like 3 layers, and now like it's dunk 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 dunk.
Well, like the way that I recommend people start, and how I actually color, are not always necessarily the same thing, because it can be overwhelming, I think, for some people, like when they see your file, and there's 20 layers, and they don't even know like how to get they're like, look, I'm just trying to get the color below the ink, like how do I like I try to keep it simple, but part of the reason that the channels and my technical style has evolved so much, to say nothing of the creative style evolving, but like the part of the reason is just, I never really claimed in any of my any video, even to this day, to be any sort of authority on any of this stuff. And back then, if you remember, the channel, I think, was called, or the videos would be called like How I Color Comics. Like that was a very intentional choice, because it wasn't like this is the best way. This is, the industry way. This is, the optimal way. Like, this is my way. Like, it's literally just how I do it. And if people respond to that, then great. If not, great. But like, I didn't want to be an authority because I wasn't. Like, my YouTube channel, looking back on it, is basically like a diary of what I'm learning, like as I'm learning it and sharing what I'm learning. Like, I look at it. I didn't have the foresight to call it this at the time, but looking back on it now, it's definitely kind of like an evolution of where I started and what I learned and how I did things early on, and then it kind of shifts over time. I do think I've sort of settled in to a style as far as like how I do my layers and things and that kind of stuff now. I put a heavy premium on editability after the fact. You know what I mean? Not everybody works this way. I mean, you can ask. I say this on my channel all the time. You can ask
100 colorists, and they all do a different. Yeah, I've watched.
You're gonna get 100 answers. Yeah, like you know my quote. But some of the early colorists that I watched, that I could find videos on and could find process stuff on, were very stripped down and very like, baked in colors, and everything was final almost immediately. And that's perfectly fine. Like, but you also have to have a tremendous amount of confidence to be able to do that effectively.
Yeah.
And the way I look at it now, like when we talk about choosing colors and things, like I feel more like I'm finding the color I need instead of just picking one randomly. Like, so the way I work now is like if I want to do shadows or something, like I'll just put a color in for the shadows, whatever it is. And because it's on its own layer, if I want to change that at any time, like, oh, this needs to be warmer, or this should be cooler, or whatever, like I can adjust it without affecting the underlying base colors, without it affecting the highlights or whatever. And it gives me flexibility. Like, I mean, you've seen videos before probably where I get to the end and all of a sudden the last 10%, like it changes dramatically into something else. Like, and I couldn't do that in the original way that I worked, not without like re-rendering lots of things, like redoing things. And that's like my biggest pet peeve in the world, is having to like redo work I've already done.
Well, yeah,
and so
it's not time
that's
efficient,
part of
so, yeah.
It's not very time efficient, and that's part of the reason why I've kind of evolved this sort of non-destructive, like couple layers options. But no, like it's one of those things that I think a lot of newcomers, and probably people the kind of people that would watch your channel, it's like they kind of try to latch on to someone's process because they don't have a process at all. But I think it's always good to remember that that's going to evolve and that's going to change for most people. Like, as you learn more and more, it's like, well, I wish I could be able to do this, and you pick up a new technique, or you realize you can do something else. But I'm still, to say that I've like cracked it and solved the problem, that I still, there's still pages and or covers that I get, and I'm just reinventing the wheel, and I'm with a lot of them, and so even after this much time, like there's still things I love to experiment. I love you talked about Bob Ross, happy accidents. Like, I'm working on this cover last week and on a stream, and I did this thing I never tried before, honestly, by accident. It looked incredible, and I was like, oh, I got to remember this for next time. You know what I mean? But like,
got to remember the accident process.
Yeah. I try to keep an open mind about process, and try not to sweat too much about, the nuts and bolts of how the page gets done, as long as it looks good at the end, basically.
No, that's great, because it's quite interesting that you said that this is your way, and everyone else is different, because that's the whole point of having like this masterclass that I'm having, because obviously I'm going to be having writers, and I've had some artists. I'm like, I want to try and get as many different creators that do different different jobs within comics. So if you want to go in that path, you can go, well, I like the way that he does this, I like the way he does that, and then you kind of create your own process. So you won't be the only colorist on, but you'll be the first. So that's cool. So
yeah, and I do think I really like the idea of what you're doing, and I did want to say that because, well, no, I think it's important that that it should be a rule, I think, that everyone in every discipline, no matter what you want to do in comics, you should try the other job one time, like at least one time. Like even if it's just to understand the process a little bit better, maybe pick up a few terms to use, because I've had those, and I've consulted with writers before, and I've had writers take my courses before that they'll openly tell me I don't want to color, I don't need to color, but will this give me like uh you know the terminology to talk to my colors, like, and that I think it does, because I've had those, and it's part of the reason why I made those the way that I did, because I've had those gigs before where, even working with artists, with line artists, where they can't come up with anything other than, well, make it pop, like,
And you
they
hate
don't
that term.
have the,
You hate that term more than
well,
anything.
it's just really overused, and everybody kind of knows what it means, but
It's
but how
generic.
you get it depends on what you're working on, and I see a lot of, I've worked with artists before where their vocabulary was just so limited that the process was frustrating for both of us, because it's like, all right, I might not be giving you what you want, but then you also can't tell me what you want. So I do like the idea, and I do recommend, if there's any writers or anyone listening to this now that like, or any other discipline, it's like, to pick up pick up some terms, learn a little bit about it, and it'll make you a better creator, it'll make you a better collaborator, to not just be in the dark about,
Doing
about what happens with
do
the
do
Photoshop in the background.
doing your courses and watching your YouTube channel has made me a better writer, along with other stuff that I've done, because I've said it on this channel
Well,
before. I when I write a script, I don't write for the audience, because the audience is never going to see the script. My one job is to inspire the artists, the colorists, and everyone that works behind the scenes. So now what I do is I write with, if I know the artist and I've worked with them before, I will write with them in mind. But I'll also write for the colorists as well by putting in color cues and stuff like that. So if it's a a scene in a wooded area, that kind of thing, I'll put what time of the year it is, what time of the day it is, so the colorist knows that, oh, if it's autumn, he knows that you could do the leaves, oranges and browns, and I've got a western comic coming out later this year, and it starts off at dusk, so I put that in so the colorist knows that he can draw the sun going down. It makes the whole comic just better. And again, that's why I read a lot of books about art and colors, and there's like you were saying, I love the whole comic making process from start to finish. If there's a book I will consume, just because I just love knowing how the sausage is made. I just do. And colouring is really, really fun. I really do enjoy it. Flatting I used to absolutely adore. I would happily sit there and flat for hours. I used to find it so peaceful and so methodical. Like, you don't have to. Steering it back to comics and colouring, I did a video a couple of weeks ago as well about common mistakes that I see as a writer when I'm project managing, comics, that kind of thing, that I see from new colorists. And two of the main issues that I see from a new colorist coming into it is contrast and value. And it's, picking colors that are way too dark on the color picker, because if it's a dark scene, they think they have to pick them, and they don't realize that. Because this took me, when I started to learn to color, this took me the longest time to get my head around. It's colors are not the colors you think they are in the real world. Colors are just affected by those that are around them and make them lighter and darker, which sounds absolutely nuts, but it's true. I mean, I literally, before we had our conversation, I'd coloured a page for a little story that I'm working on for a buddy, and he was like, "Can you make the mountains darker?" And sorry, lighter. And I went, "They're actually really light. They're like mid-range. Like the sky's like really bright, and then the mountain is actually just mid-range. It's not actually that dark." And I had to show him like a black and white version of it, and like show the color picks. Like, there's not a lot. It's the colors that are around them that make them dark. So I always see that from that mistake from new beginners, is like thinking you have to use really, really dark colors. And it's the value put in, picking two colors that are very similar on the same value. So if you were to put them in black and white, they look very, very similar in, on the hue. Are there any mistakes that you see regularly from new colorists that you'd say, do you know what, if you're starting out, this is what to look out for and just keep an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is understanding what the colorist is there to do. I mean, I know that sounds very broad, but like, there are a lot of people that, well, like I was when I started, where you think, well, coloring's about staying inside the lines, and that's pretty much it. You know, a colorist, you know, primary job is there to help tell the story and to create depth and mood and atmosphere, and it has very little to do with actual color most of the time. Like you said, most of it is about manipulating, you know, values and just the contrast between two colors. um, I'm working on a video now that I'm excited about, just that kind of gets into this in a unique way that I haven't really talked about before. uh, but you know, colors almost have, you know, two colors next to each other on a canvas kind of have an energy, you know, between each other, depending on how far apart they are, you know, from each other in the color wheel and in your color picker. And it's like a really dark color next to a really light color is going to grab your attention more than, you know, two colors that are very close to each other. And just the idea of if you can understand that and understand that you're really just pushing things back or you're pulling things forward, like those are your options.
Yeah, no,
and when do you, how you get there, you know, there's a million ways to get there, but at the end of the day, when the page is done, there should be things that jump out at you. There should be things that your eye is going to look past. And for a lot of new colorists, to answer your question, one of the most common things that I see is this idea that, all right, well, I've detailed this to this level, I'm going to detail everything to this level. And everything ends up detailed, which means kind of like nothing is.
Yeah.
You know,
so your eye doesn't know where to go to.
Your eye doesn't know where to land. And so it's really important to like have like breathing room on your canvas. You know, it's like, and most people just don't know how to look for this stuff, you know. But if you pick up, you know, the comic book on your desk, you know, that has a cover on it, there's going to be sections that have lots of contrast and lots of detail. There's going to be places that are, again, relatively always being the key word, that are simpler, that are closer together, that are, you know, meant to recede. You know, the actual technical ins and outs and the color theory stuff, like all that stuff's important to know, but it's not more important than really just figuring out those two things. Figuring out like, how do you get things to come forward? How do you think things to go back? Like, and I didn't understand that at all when I started.
No.
And
no one does. No.
Yeah, and the other thing that kind of dovetails with that, the question that I get a lot about, how do I get faster, or I'm really slow, how, you know, I feel like it takes me 2 days to color a page, like how do I get any quicker at it? A lot of that is being strategic in your choices about where you're spending time detailing things, you know, which is exactly what I was talking about you know, before. You know, if I for a lot of new people, they think that everything has to be, you know, polished to the nth degree. But the more you do this, the more you'll understand that there's things that need to be detailed. There's things that need to, you know, spend time on, and there's things you'll almost spend no time on, you know, and that is something that takes a little bit of time to learn. But even that, it's not like it's some crazy weird formula. Is it important? Like, does the viewer need to notice it, or does it need to be something that supports the things that people notice? So it seems very, looking back, it seems like a very simple, straightforward thing to me now, but not. And I realize it's not for people that are just starting out, especially.
The way I try and think about it is the way that an artist should think about it is on the page and look at the panel. What is the most important element in that panel? What do I want to focus on? It's like, you know, I've spoken to artists and they say, like, you know, what's the most important thing in the panel because you're on a deadline. They will draw that, and then if they've got time, then they'll do like backgrounds and stuff like that, or they'll make it basic. So what is that one thing? And it's the same with coloring. It's like, where do I want the reader? Where does the reader need to focus? What element is it? Like, is it the background? Is there something there that they need to look at, or is it something in the foreground? So that's how I approach it from the courses that I've done from you guys. That's how I now think. But it's so difficult at the start to try and get your head around some of this. It sounds so basic when you're like, no, it's just where your eye needs to go to, that kind of thing. And the other one that used to drive me absolutely mental was
what color. Done. I'm fully aware of that.
What color skin? Again, skin is like relative to the colors that are in the atmosphere. Like, where are they? If they're on Mars, their skin's going to be a red color. It's like I've got lights on here, and they're like a white soft light, but I can change the Kelvin value to make them very yellow, and that's going to change the color of my skin. And it's that kind of thing that I think when you start it, it's very, very difficult to try and get your head around and say values, contrast, and the rendering thing as well. Is there, if someone wanted to start coloring, where would you point them to? I mean, apart from your channel, obviously, where would you, if if you were starting today, you've been doing this 10 years, if you was to start right now, where would you begin? I mean, you use Photoshop, you use Clip Studio, you use Procreate. Where would you start and what would you use?
Oh man, that's like the $10,000 question or whatever. Like, I as far as software goes, I don't think, if we're just talking about people that are just starting out, it honestly doesn't matter. Like, if you've got an app that has layers that you can import line art and make colors on, go for it. Like, because at the beginning, the biggest part of the process is just understanding the process itself and figuring out how layers work and those kind of things. Um, there are, I do think Photoshop and Clip Studio are the most full featured, but they're also going to be the most intimidating for someone that's brand new. I love Procreate. I wish I used it more, but there are some limitations in some of its selection tools that make it difficult for
no magic wand.
basically. But there's things that make it tough to use like in a production environment, but I still use it for personal projects and when I want a more traditional feel for something, like I just want to, it's the equivalent of my sketchbook basically at this point, but I can grab my iPad and go crazy. But software, people get caught up in software, but just find something that works for you and try it out. But as far as like things I wish I knew when I started, I wish I had found, and it's never far away. This book, Color and Light by James Gurney, is like, this is my Bible of color information. You can learn a lot about the weirdness of color from that book, and you'll. I recommend that to everyone that asks. But as far as like the nuts and bolts of things, that there is a lot of that stuff on YouTube. As far as like flatting and that kind of stuff. But I'm trying to think any other books that I liked. There's a book, and what is it called? It's called Vision, Color and Composition for Film. Actually, and I'll get you a link to it. You can find it. It's the best comic book coloring tutorial book I've probably ever seen. It has nothing to do with comics or at all, but the principles are all the same. Whether you're creating a piece of art for a panel or you're creating it for a frame in a movie, your goals are exactly the same. And I wish I had realized that earlier, because now I study a lot of cinematography. I watch CG studios on YouTube, like how they're compositing shots and things. Like you can learn so much, and even more than focusing on just color for comics, because as good as that is, and yeah, of course you have to figure out the nuts and bolts of how it's done, but the big picture stuff, some of the best stuff that you can read is outside of comics. You know what I mean? It's in other fields, and it's just broader than comics. This stuff applies to whether you're doing comic books or Magic the Gathering cards or kids books or movie posters or whatever. Like, they're universal, kind of foundational things that cross all of those things. And you really have to understand the art and the composition side, I think, to really excel as a colorist. And I do think a lot of newer people to it kind of missed that point. Is that they missed it? Look, there's an art to this, and that there's a skill set that comes from understanding just how art principles work, much less color theory or color principles. But understanding composition, understanding framing, like all that stuff is what I wish I had done early on, because it would have completely changed the way I do things, and it has. I mean, the way I do things now is very different from what I did when I started. I tend to start now with just, you know, what's important, what's not, get it to pop, and then everything else, you know, get it to pop. See, I threw it in there.
No, I didn't want to say.
Get it to stand out, and then everything else is just in support of that. You know, like, anyway, a long rambling answer.
No,
Hopefully,
no,
there's
that's
something.
good because you basically ruined film for me. Now every time I see like blue and yellow light in a film, and I'm like, oh, Kurt.
And not even just that, not even just the colors, but how things are framed, and like, and you know, watch some David Fincher movies. Like, watch what is, I mean, if you can handle Seven, watch Seven, like that. But things like what's the one that I cannot watch enough of, about Zodiac.
Okay.
Watch Zodiac, the one with Gyllenhaal and Robert Downey Jr. and all those guys. And look at the shots, and look at how the characters are framed, and look at all the same principles you and I are talking about today. They're doing the same exact thing. And even the goals are similar, because, you know, in a comic, you're jumping from panel to panel, and you're pulling a reader's eye from one panel to the next. You know, they're doing this with cuts and edits, and you know, movies are cut very quickly now, and you have a, you know, a 2-second shot, a 3-second shot. You only have so much time to grab the viewer's eye and get them to see what's important before the shot's over. You know, and so, like, they take a lot of these principles and really just crank them all the way up, you know, as high as they can for some movies, you know, because things just move so fast. But no, but studying cinematography and studying traditional painting, I was never really a traditional painter. Like, I mean, I dabble a little bit as a kid. And, you know, I remember doing a Bob Ross in school or something at some point, and messing around with watercolors a little bit. But when I say, like, you know, to look into the traditional world, I mean, look at their tutorials. You know, I learned tons from, you know, watercolor artists, and you know, James Gurney. You know, his YouTube channel is all watercolor and gouache, and I don't use any of this stuff ever. But I use the same techniques. You know, just doing them digitally. You know, and that's probably the best advice I can give, is just to, you know, don't be afraid to get outside of comics. In fact, I encourage people, get outside of comics to learn it, because
no,
you know,
I totally agree with you. I mean, like, when again, sorry to pull it back to me, but I'm on my colorist. I'm on my colorist journey, and it's literally like, you know, one of the other things that I found hard was it's looking where, like, at the moment, I've got a light there, and it's where the shadows of my face and stuff like that. You know, my eye socket is casting the shadow. You know, I've got a shadow in this eye socket. You know, that kind of thing. It's looking where light is, and everywhere I look now, you know, even, you know, if the sun's coming in, where is it bouncing? Where is it? I'm constantly looking and trying to learn how this kind of stuff works, because I think one of the other big problems I notice from colorists from when we start is we don't, like, again, it's the program. You always like feel like, oh, I need to, just like having a YouTube channel. Should I have the best camera? Should I have this? You think, should I have Photoshop? Should I have this? Have all the best stuff? And, you know, you kind of think, right, now I need the right palettes. Now I need all the right brushes. And one thing, the good thing about doing your course is you get the palettes, but it's like a lot of time you're just using a soft brush. That's it.
Yeah, it's just a default brush. Yeah,
it's just a soft brush, and everyone thinks when they start they need to use all these textured, you know, gritty kind of brushes to get certain things, and that's not where you need to start. You need to start. You need to walk before you can run, and it's the same with writing and drawing and coloring. It's like, just play with the soft brush, you know, and you know, cut and grad, and, you know, just try those little techniques, and then you kind of build up to it, because as you get that confidence, you can buy, you know, some brushes, you know, from, I can't remember the guy's name now, but was it Kyle Webster brushes and stuff like that. I think I've got loads of them. Never actually used them, because all I use is my K Micro Russell brush and my Soda brush and my Marta de Grassi brush, which I got in your pack, and they're all I use. And even when I did the Pro Coat course, like, I'm just using them brushes, just soft brush, because the other brushes, I don't need them. I mean, I'm not that good yet anyway, but, you know, it's like that's all I tend to use. So, give us some great advice on, you know, where to start, you know, some books, that kind of thing. When you look at a page, you know, you don't flat your own pages anymore. You have your own flatter who are worth their weight in gold. A good flatter is, you know, fantastic.
Right.
When you get your flatted pages back from your flatter, are they in a local color or are they just in random colors? Because that's what I always find a bit weird. Because some colorists like them local color, some colorists like them in like wacky colors. So they can build their own local colors up.
When you say local colors, do you mean base colors, or do you actually mean local color?
Base color, like if they were under like the sun on a bright summer's day, so skin would be pink.
Okay.
Sky would be blue, grass would be green, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, in my case, and I think for most colors, the Flatter's color choices are entirely irrelevant to me. Like, to be perfectly honest, like I've got a handful of Flatters that I use. I've got one main Flatter I've been with me the entire time, like 9-10 years now. But I use when they get too bogged down, I've got a couple others that I use, and they all kind of do different things slightly with what that is. But it's about the selections, like, and it doesn't matter to me now if I'm doing a book, like say I get like I'm on a new book right now where like
which is
there's a character with like an established, what's that,
which is
oh yeah, I can't say it.
I'm joking.
The shock collar will go off. You can't see it with the beard, but if I say the name, but what were we talking about? Flatting. Sorry, I have a brain of like a canary. What I do now, and I didn't understand colorists that did this when I started. I do now, is the first thing a lot of them will do is completely cover everything the Flatter's done with a solid color, like just to completely hide what's there. Because one, it allows you to see what needs to be changed, and then two, it completely removes any possible influence that, like, I know I'm going to change all those colors, but if I see the page and it's got a certain set of colors and they're close to in the maybe ballpark what I'm going to choose, like that's gonna, like, I don't know if that's going to affect my perception of the colors that I would have chosen. And so I basically want to remove that risk completely. And so the first thing I do is just cover the entire thing with like a neutral gray or something, that way, especially with the way Clip Studio works. I won't get into the technical stuff too much, but Clip has reference layers, which means you can have your flats be the thing your wand is selecting, even if you're on a layer above it, and that is a massive time saver. But to answer your question, as far as like what I prefer from a Flatter, if I'm working on a book that has like, especially characters that have like established costumes and things that are going to be the same on every panel, like I'll send them sheets that just let them know where the breaks are, where the selections go, like this is blue, this is red, this is whatever, but even the colors they choose, like that's more about just making sure that they're splitting things up the right way. It's like, don't make his glove the same color as his foot if they're different colors, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the biggest error that a Flatter can make, I think, is just to have too many things sharing the same color. And so I try to kind of set them up with some examples and make sure that they know that this is this is that, and they can kind of keep it separate. But the actual colors themselves that they're choosing really doesn't have any bearing on how the page turns out for me.
So last thing I want to talk about, let's talk about money. How does one get paid with regards to coloring? Do you get a page rate, or do you do back end stuff? How does it work for yourself? If you don't mind speaking about it, it's to try and give people that want to jump into the comics just a little bit more of information about how it works, because you have bills, you've got cats to feed, you've got how does that work for you?
So colorists, like I think most disciplines in this industry, are paid per page, and it depends on the publisher as far as any kind of like back end or royalties or that kind of thing. But most of the projects I'm on, there's a base page rate, and then depending on the project, there might be a small percentage back end included with that. But for most, especially just any non big two kind of work, independent work, that kind of stuff, mostly it's just a page rate, most of the time. But if it's something that if you've got a little bit of experience, or and depending on the publisher, you might be able to also get some kind of back end percentage too. But for the most part, it's done on a per page basis.
Just out of curiosity, how many pages do you regularly color a day?
It varies. It varies a lot. I mean, it depends on my workload. To me, like, if I could do like two before lunch and two after lunch, like that's kind of like a perfect day for me. Like, but that doesn't mean there are days that you don't need to get six done or eight done or whatever, you know. And sometimes less, of course. It just depends on what's going on. I've unlike a lot of my colorist compatriots out there, like I kind of I've tried to limit uh, probably more than most how many books I take at a time. Usually it's no more than two or three. Um, I've had some overlap with four before or whatever, but like I try to keep it two or three for myself just because it's not the only thing I'm doing. Like, you know, I'm also trying to make YouTube videos and I'm doing courses and everything else. So, you know, I'm kind of doing both. Um, but yeah, like two, three, four a day is probably my average, and a lot of that also comes from Vault being really good. I'm in a lot of Vault books right now, and they're really good with their scheduling, and so they try to give me 3 weeks to do a book, which is amazing. Okay, like that is an abundance of time to get to do. You're basically looking at like a page a day if you were working almost every day, which I do try to take weekends off most of the time now. But part of that, uh, even just only being able to do that much, has to do with the publisher giving making sure that I've got time to do that. And I think the work's better for it, you know, because you can being able to finish a page, sleep on it, you know, and look at it again the next day, or maybe revisit it. You know, I've had books where, you know, some books you don't have the time to do this, but you know, I'll have books where you get the 20 pages done or the 22 pages done and actually have time at the end to go back and like look at it as a whole and say like, well, let me make sure that you know this level of detail could be brought up and like and really try to like you know have some time to make it all cohesive and make it all um you know the same level of polish and that kind of thing and I'm glad to have that kind of time with a lot of their books but like I said, that doesn't mean that there aren't days that there's a lot more or that that cover comes in that's got to be done that day or whatever, like you know that throws a wrench into your plans or whatever. This industry as a whole is terrible at scheduling covers for some reason. They always sneak up on you. It's like I think it's because they have to have them so early for Diamond. You know, it's like months early to get it into the book,
Yep.
and it always seems to sneak up on everybody. It's like, when do you need this cover? Is yesterday possible? Like they get a lot of that with covers, but that's a pretty average day for me. I would say is three, 4 pages maybe.
Fantastic. Kurt, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about the process. I could literally talk about coloring with you for absolutely ages, and hopefully we get to do this again sometime. But again, you know, if you want to follow Kurt, you know, he's on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle again? It'll be at the bottom, but if you want to say it for the algorithm,
Yeah,
or you know, the captions and stuff, it will come up.
yeah, I'm kind of terrible at social media, but Twitter is K Michael Russell, and same thing on Instagram. But I'm not I'm not as active as I should be on Instagram probably,
And
but or social media in general. I've kind of turned all that stuff down a
and,
lot
and
for
if
my
someone
own mental health.
And if someone wants to do one of your courses, which I recommend, where can they find your courses at? There'll be links in the description, but you know, just say it out loud and say it proud. Come on.
Yeah, well, go to comiccolor.com is my like that's kind of the hub for everything. There's a free PDF you can download that's got like my top 10 coloring tips or something like that, and but there's links to all the courses there, all the various places that those are found, and links to my YouTube channel, and there's a free lesson in there you can watch, and if you want to test things out, but yeah, if you use comiccolor.com, there's a courses button at the top. You can check those out. And right now, I'm still running my sale that I've been running since the pandemic started. So if you use coupon code Wash Your Hands, you will get 50% off anything in the store. And I appreciate you having me. This has been fun. We've been kind of circling each other for a couple of years now, and And I appreciate you inviting me on,
No,
and for
you
plugging all my stuff repeatedly, even though I didn't pay you for it.
No, my pleasure. Again, again from I know I'm still on my colorist journey. I'm not there, and I'm a few years from where I need to be with it. But again, as a creator as a whole, it has helped me be a better writer and a better product manager of my own comics. So I'd recommend that anyone do some courses on art and anatomy and coloring stuff. It's going to do is be another string to your bow, that kind of thing. And in the video I did a couple of weeks ago, about flatting. It's great. It will save you money. Do you know what I mean? If you can flat the pages for the colorist, it's money that you don't have to pay the colorist to color them. So it will actually help you. And just to let anyone know, if you are watching this in the UK, color for Kurt's website doesn't have a U because they spell it weird over there.
Wait a minute. Let me double check something.
Oh, you're gonna check if you put it in with the U, it will still connect. You've got that domain as well.
I think I do. Put the U in. I was thinking about you.
Fair enough.
Keep your extra U in there. It'll still get you there.
I was gonna get you on that one. But no, thank you so much for having you. Guys, remember, I'll see you in the next video. Remember, if I can make comics, anyone can, and we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.